Welcome to Paradigm Playbook, the podcast on the business of sports. With 50 plus years of experience, Steve Cook shares insights weekly, featuring top playmakers shaping the industry. Get ready to script your next play. Now, here's your host.
Hello and welcome to Paradigm Playbook. I'm your host, Steve Cook, alongside my good friend, Ross Gage. Ross is coming to us from Australia. Ross and I have crossed paths many times over the years at different events, and we're about to cross paths again in Canada this time. Ross, why don't you introduce yourself as you like to be introduced?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Steve. I hope your viewers can understand my Aussie accent. My background overwhelmingly was in swimming, coaching, and then had my own swim school for a long time. And that sort of morphed into associations with Australian Swim Coaches and Teachers Association. And I set up in there a thing called Swim Australia, which was the first thing that brought swim schools together in Australia as a type of association area. Then that morphed into the Australian Swim Schools Association, which I set up and ran that for quite a number of years. Love that organisation space, bringing like-minded people together. I got approached beginning of COVID by a number of gymnastics clubs in Australia to set up something similar to the Swim Schools Association for gymnastics clubs. So an industry body, not a rival sports competition or sports governing body, but an industry body like the swim schools. So I helped set that up and been running that with the board for just over 5 years now, loving that. Not quite a full-time position. So when the IACDP came, Frank Saline there asked if I could help there set up a little bit. And in the last year, I've taken on a very small part-time role helping Frank and the board and the committees with the IACDP, which is the International Association of Child Development Programs. So very much in that association space these days. And one of the things from going from swim schools to gymnastics clubs, it really enforced the massive overlaps in a lot of children's activity provider space. There's so many of the same issues there, whether it's very similar staffing issues, very similar customer issues. A lot of the trends are the same. Obviously, the skills that are being taught to the students is in many cases the only real difference. And with the IACDP hat on, I saw that firsthand, how so similar that is with dance and cheer and ninja and the like. And you've experienced that, Steve, as you've got around those similarities across activity providers.
I think it's great. And for the Gymnastics Clubs of Australia, you're not overseeing competitions. What are the benefits that clubs are looking when they join an association? What are just some of the top line benefits that clubs get? If you're running a club and you're not a member of an association, what are you missing out on?
Oh, yes. And using the GCA experience and the ASA experience for that, there's the help. And no matter how vested you are, it's just so hard to keep across everything. So for one, changes in regulations as a business owner or leader that you have to keep across, whether it's in government with taxation, insurance, child safeguarding. It's so much easier to keep across those with information from associations, but also getting help with other business systems, getting help with how to develop the customer experience, workforce issues. There's so much experience out there in the group to harness that group, but to also then see what's happening, bring that back and present it in a very curated fashion to your members, something that they just don't have the time or the connections to do themselves. So I think that's like there. But then when you then get the networking side of it, and that's really hard to place a value on it. And the other ones, you can place a value on it because you can see, okay, this has helped me get a few customers that I might not have otherwise got, and it's helped me retain them for longer. Here's some savings I've had. So this has improved my net profit, my bottom line. This has helped me free up a little bit more of my time for family and hobbies. You can almost measure some of those things, but the networking side of it's much harder to do. And the GCA, and similar with IACDP, there's a lot of leaders in there who are very happy to share. They're all successful and they're wanting to thrive, but they might come from a big club or small club. They might be a single site or they might be multi-sites. They might be in a metropolitan area or regional area, but they're all passionate about it. They want to thrive. They understand that by doing better with their business, that's also going to flow through to be better at coaching their gymnasts or teaching their swimmers or what it is. So that networking side is just so invaluable. You see over the times too, and that sort of morphs into a lot of friendships. So see over the times with conferences, it gets to the stage where people know you're putting on a good conference with programs. At the end of the conference, all they want to know is, where are we next year and what time? Because we want to catch up with our network and expand it. We know it's going to be good. And then you're really hitting the nail on the head.
I got involved a lot of years ago, and you're right. Very often the national association that is the governing body of a sport is so involved in regulations and events and putting Olympic teams together that they don't have the time to really bring in the people that know about the best financial system or the best onboarding or how to train this or how to write a business plan and all those things. And you're absolutely right, Ross, in that the people in this industry, and maybe it's true in other industries, I only know sports, but everybody is so willing to give. And you're a good example that you grew up in swimming and you're willing to give everything that you learned there back to gymnastics now at the IACDP. So that is almost an association of associations. The way it's growing now, we're starting to see martial arts and judo and cheer, and there's so many different things. How many different associations do you think we'll see in Canada?
I know there's some either directly or indirectly with some of their board members coming along where the CEO may not have been able to make it this time, but there's going to be people who are involved in swim in Australia and Canada and the US and Mexico. Gymnastics and as you know, the gymnastics scene in the US, there's different types of associations. There'll be representatives there. Canadian cheer's going to be there. There's some of the dance organisations are going to be there in Ninja. So it's a really great cross-reference there. And I think one of the things I love about the ICDP is that it has those sort of three pillars of members. You've got leading providers from around the world, and then you have associations again from around the world, and I'll come back to that because that's a really good growth area. And then there's suppliers as well, and then so you couple those three mixes in with the mix of various countries, and then the other layer of mixing of gym and sweat and cheer and ninja, and that there's a whole range of activities, a whole range of associations, a whole range of suppliers, a whole range of countries all coming together. It's a little bit like at the Olympic Games where you have all these different elements come together. They have like an overriding fit and passion for what they're doing, but they all come together. But I mentioned, Stephen, you were saying about the association. So for IACDP, that's one of the major strategic pushes this year is the association memberships to partner more so with those. So there's very much an association of associations element with the IACDP. So there can be that sharing across associations from different activities, different different countries. That'll flow through to members, benefits for their members as well. But it'll also help IACDP connect more strongly with the likes of UNICEF and different bodies like that who can see here's a great group to connect, who can help deliver a lot of their wonderful goals.
It's interesting because when Ross and I have met, it's been invariably at an event, and I can't really remember, but whether it's the summit or boot camp, or we've been to a lot of different ones. The thing that's fun is that we get high-level looks at big picture issues, but then we also get people digging down and how to engage with a 2-year-old and how to onboard. We have people talking about how to do in-water interviews for swim instructors, so many different things. If you take one person and try to teach it all, you'll never get it all. But when you have hundreds of clubs and businesses, entrepreneurs that are all willing to give, that's how I got involved. I own a family entertainment center that sports and family entertainment, and mine's baseball, but I can learn from swimming on how they onboard, how they handle customer attention and retention and all those things. I think it's exciting. So I'm speaking at IACDP and I'm very excited about it. And what I'm talking about is the crisis in youth sports. And I use that word intentionally, crisis, but not to say it's all bad. So sometimes crisis is also opportunity. We have issues in the United States, and I'm curious if you have any issues there. So one of the issues we have in the United States is what we call travel sports. Some of the families it happens in baseball a lot, that they're traveling so much that the expense to the family gets very high and kids end up quitting early. So do you have a problem with kids exiting sports early in Australia?
Yeah, no, very much. I like to look at it in that participation space rather than, which obviously heads to a performance track as well. But in that participation space, in that real formative years and a number of activities. So activities like gymnastics, swimming, and dance, it can be under 5 down to 3-year-olds, and then in other activities they might start to pick that up as maybe a 6 or a 7-year-old. But in that participation space, those costs, what's happened in Australia to help with that, each state government have a voucher program where, I'll give an example of one, a family will get $200 twice a year to help with their registration and equipment costs and things to participate in sport and physical activity. So it's very much recognised as an issue, but it's still, as the children go, and I see this across a lot of countries, when they go from, say, primary school to high school, that's a real crunch point where the education side in high school gets a little more intense and there's more pressure to decide some of that extra time, am I going to spend that on sport or extra learning with that? And so there's a lot of big dropout out of formal sport around that 12, 13-year-old age when they transition. And I know a number of sports try to address that by giving options there where there may be less training sessions required. There might be a little bit more fun put into the training sessions to help keep at least a number of those kids going. As you would recall, Steve, going back maybe 20, 30 years ago, when you were getting into a performance sport, it was pretty much you make these training sessions, this is what it is, and it's focused. And there weren't other options for those who maybe didn't want to actually go down that path. So I think that the number of the sports are getting more conscious of opening up those options. But to go back to your original point, there's certainly a lot of concern around the sports with that. Interestingly, the higher professional football codes, and we have a number of them in Australia, who's maybe need the least help, their pathways are probably doing the best because at that top level where they've got a lot of money, they're feeding that back into kids coming up in clubs, getting free kit and registrations and the like. But whereas some of maybe the more traditional Olympic sports don't have that much money. So it's a little bit more of a challenge there for that. And one of the other challenges, getting away from participation a little bit, but on the performance side, as some of those national football codes, I'm talking about soccer, rugby league, Australian football, as their women's competition at the national level are getting stronger and more professional and more money going into it, which is fantastic for those. Some of the other sports where there's not that level of money, some of their athletes are then thinking, oh, I can go over here, be on a TV stage and get a little more money. So that challenge for talent is getting more intense.
One of the challenges that we have in a lot of sports is that there's this draw to higher level and it tend to create an expectation among parents. This is more in primary sports in the US, baseball, football, where they start thinking, well, if I do well, I can go to college. And there's a lot that think, well, if I go to college, I can get a scholarship and someone will pay for it. And the parents start buying into that. And this is something that I'm going to talk about in my talk. One of the problems there is the expectation isn't true. And the second thing is that of all the ones that make it, the statistics show that those that didn't specialize early do better. So we have people saying he needs to specialize in baseball, but he's only 10 years old. And
yes,
in reality, they need to do multiple sports. And I'm a big gymnastic person. So I believe that no matter what you're doing, you should do gymnastics because I think it helps everything. Obviously, everybody should learn to swim. These are things, and the more we can get kids into multiple activities, the better they will be mentally, physically, and everything moving forward.
Totally agree, Steve. And my original background going through university was a physical education teacher, and then I'm involved a little bit in the exercise science area. But in that physical education space, it's summed into you right from the early days that kids need a foundation in a range of activities. There'll come a time if they want to be a high performer, then they need to specialize, but get a really broad base of activities. And I think one of the benefits of that too is it's a more enjoyable time. So you're going to stay more likely to stay in activity. But when any parent asks me now or general advice with that, I said, when they're really young, and we're talking sort of preschoolers, toddlers, gymnastics and swimming. That, as you said, gymnastics is a marvellous foundation for so many activities. You see some professional footballers, they do a backflip after they don't do a touchdown or score a try or kick a goal or whatever it is. You know what their background was. So that background in gymnastics, so even if you're not thinking the Olympic pathway, it's just an incredible background in your own development, mentally, physically, and emotionally. And then as for other sports, and then swimming, similar benefits, but particularly in Australia, where there's so much water around, it's also a water safety skill. And if you want to enjoy a lot of pastimes in Australia, being able to swim at least reasonably well helps you enjoy those things.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I want to jump over to another topic. One of the issues we have in some sports is gaining and training staff members. So there's some sports, gymnastics is one, where in my day, a lot of the gymnastic coaches were former male gymnasts that had been through college. And now we don't have nearly the same number of college men's gymnastic programs. So the clubs, they're tasked with building their own teachers. Is that an issue in Australia?
Oh, yes. And I think it's becoming an issue going into the pandemic and all of the shutdowns, certainly exacerbated. And I know from friends in different parts of the world, similar experiences, certainly exacerbated after that, where some people through lockdowns and things said, actually, I don't mind working 15 hours a week rather than 20 or whatever. And even if there's maybe enough numbers out there, there's not the same availability in hours. That sort of adds to the problem. And as the coaches, and I saw that in swimming and I've heard the same in gymnastics, a lot of the coaches, they were successful swimmers or successful gymnasts. And exactly as you said, they come in and they don't necessarily have a grasp on teaching and coaching the little guys. There's a different dynamic there, and that's a massive growth area. So you need more people for that, and with some different skill sets. So training and retaining those is a big issue over here as well. I was just chatting last night with my partner. She manages a swim school, and the higher ups, this one's actually at a school, came to her yesterday and said, okay, it's going really well. What's some things you guys want to keep this going and do better? And from her discussions with me previously is you need to go back and say to gain and retrain more teachers, which is limiting you guys at the moment. We need this and this, whether it's the potential to pay them more or have more perks or whatever it is there. And there's the new generations coming through, and they'll have some different characteristics. And I realise they're just generalisations. It doesn't mean everyone has them. But to be across those and embrace those, like a plug for the IACDP conference, Katrina McCarter is coming out from Australia, and she's speaking in that area, and she's a world leader on marketing to mums and embracing even staff members in that Gen Y, Gen Z, what they're looking for and the like. So that's an interesting one, and like a really good discussion point. We had one, like a very practical example, Steve. At the end of one of our recent events, we're talking with an older club owner and a younger club owner, and the younger club owner was saying, like, I'm not happy with the way a lot of you older guys keep saying some of these characteristics of the youngers are bad things. Maybe some of them are good things, and you need to change your view of it. And a very practical example was a lot of them like to have their birthday off, a day off. It's their birthday, have a day off. And I know back in my day, I would say, God, you're ridiculous, aren't you? Go and celebrate in there. They want the birthday off. So whether you agree with that, if you wanted to actually retain some of those people, you might have to think in, yep, we give staff members their birthday off. Now, that's an example. It mightn't be a good one, but they're the changes in thinking that the owners and the leaders need to be embracing as well.
You mentioned that you had a background in physical education. I do as well. And a lot of gymnastics was always part of physical education, at least in the United States. So I got interested in gym class, but the gym class in the public schools is down quite a bit in the United States. We don't have mandatory gym physical education in every state in the United States. Some only have it once a week, and some of them are banned from making it what they call an aggressive activity session. In other words, they can have them walk, but they can't, have them run. I coach baseball, but I wrote a book on baseball for parents, and it's based on what I learned in physical education. And it's amazing how much we learn, and you can coach your kids till they're 7, 8, 9, 10, based on what you learn in physical education. So I think maybe it's putting more on the parents. Do you agree with that or not?
Oh, yes. Yeah. We've seen a similar thing in Australia where we have a national curriculum, easier to do than in the US because there's only 6 states and easy to get a little bit more agreement. And the federal government's got a lot of money to help. Okay, guys, we're going to do this. So anyway, national curriculum and physical education is a core part of it. So to varying extents, it has to be in there. But over time, there'll be elements, and gymnastics is a good one. And I'll use the swimming example where a lot of the kids got exposed to swimming at primary school young and quite repetitively, and the phys ed teacher would lead that, might have a few parent helpers. As numbers of phys ed teachers not necessarily drop, but they had more and more things to do, the classroom teacher was then expected to lead some of those things. And for all areas like litigation, and they're busier and busier, classroom teachers were saying, we don't want to be leading that. We don't feel qualified. We've got, plenty of things on our curriculum already. So a lot of what used to happen in daily physical education, or the regularity of it, has certainly decreased. Some of it's led to outsourcing, where even in the school curriculum, a specialist from a swim school might come in and deliver that from them, or a gymnastics club who's associated might help deliver some of that program. But it's physical education in schools is definitely on the decline.
So you make a great point, and one of the things that I encourage gymnastic clubs to do, because gymnastics is not taught in physical education, if they went on a volunteer basis and offered to teach one class a week at the local elementary school, one, it provides a very valuable service for the children and the families, but it's also a pretty strong marketing message that, hey, we have this to offer. Rather than spend a lot of money on Google ads or whatever, if you just get out and into the elementary schools and engage with the kids, and you don't need a lot of equipment to do primary gymnastics, somersaults and such. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
and
I
tumbling
think
and
we can do more of that.
oh, yes, the market's there. There's often a facility space that's not used at other times that you can potentially then,
Yeah.
as an arrangement with the school, come in outside of their hours to use as well with those facilities. You're right in with your potential customers and clients. I use an example of a swim school that I knew when they would deliver the school's program for them. They said, we'll even do report cards for you. And the report cards where if the child was a little bit below average, it would note that your child could probably do with a little bit of extra help, and here's our swim school number. If the child was above average, they point out your child's got a lot of talent, they might want to expand on that, here's our swim school number. And so that was almost blatantly but indirectly using that connection to recruit, and they're doing it in the area where they are anyway.
Do you find that the entrepreneurs that you're in touch with in gymnastics and swimming, is that a growing business? Are there more clubs opening, or is it declining?
Oh no, the more opening, and probably the swim school world is here compared with a lot of other places in the world is pretty saturated. When I had my own swim school, within a 5-minute drive, there was 9 other sites that had swim schools.
Oh,
So it's a
wow.
pretty competitive environment. And this is in Greater Brisbane, which was probably the most competitive environment. So there's a lot of them there, but they're still coming out. A lot of that growth area is in smaller niche areas, and they might be very happy with, say, 600 students. Whereas in swim school land in Australia, very common to go to 2,000, 2,500 lessons a week, but it becomes very much getting your own job. It's not growing a business that you'll have, but boom, here it is. You like doing this. You're your own boss. It's like part of a franchise. So that part is definitely growing. The private equity starting to getting more involved. Nowhere near the extent that it is in the US, but starting to become more significant in swimming. In gymnastics, more internally at the moment, whereas in swimming, a lot of the private equity money has come in from the US there, where there's some more mature networks involved there. But it's still happening. I think one of the big trends in gymnastics is traditionally it's overwhelmingly been delivered by not-for-profit clubs and smaller private enterprises. Now that ratio is changing all the time. The privately owned clubs, and there's still family businesses overwhelmingly, is becoming bigger and bigger as a percentage of the delivery system, with the non-profit sector shrinking, and a lot of the non-profits out there of smaller clubs, but they're serving a terrific community service because they're in areas where maybe not really profitable for like a business to come in. So they're meeting a fantastic community need.
I'm going longer than I usually do, but I'm fascinated by the similarities and differences. And one of the guests I had on the podcast not too long ago, Mira Oken, and Mira was Oak Aquatics. The thing that I like about her and how she talks about doing well by doing good, how you can balance purpose and profit, and it all fits together. And that's the wonderful thing about the business we're in, Ross, is that there's a lot of advantages, and you can do anything. You can be a plumber or a landscaper. There's all kinds of businesses, but we're in a business where we get to play with kids, really make a difference in the world moving forward. And Mirren made a big point about you can do all that and still make a nice profit and a good living. So I assume it's the
Exactly.
same in Australia.
Yes, yeah. One of the benefits of being in an association or going to a conference is you learn how to improve your net profit, but that's not just a thing in its sake. Yes, it does then help you have some hobbies and enjoy a little bit of time, but it also helps what you're doing be delivered better. The kids and the parents benefit, you benefit, your staff benefit from it. Yeah, no, exactly. And mentioning Mirren there, to me, she's the number one leader in the swim schools industry in the world. She's just so on it in so many different ways. And what she's done just recently in getting her staff and key people now the ownership of the business where she's still involved,
Yeah.
but that's amazing
Yeah,
what she's done.
she's amazing. She's got a TED Talk coming out soon.
Oh, I can't
She's
wait.
she's fascinating. Okay, to wrap this up, so one question is, do you have a national gathering for GCA?
Yes, we do. And any of your viewers are more than welcome to come. Our one this year is on the 26th to the 28th of July, a city called Newcastle, which is just out of Sydney. We have, I think, 5 people coming in from US, or sorry, 4 US, and one from Japan, Tiffany Mills, they're presenting, plus a lot of local leaders. It's all about the business of gymnastics. Everyone's welcome. We've had a number of overseas guests come since we started it, so they'll feel most welcome. Come over, look up Gymnastics Clubs Australia. That'd be just a great way to lead into it. And if they have any queries, please contact me.
And they can contact you through GCA, right?
Exactly, yes. Yeah, my contact details will be there.
For my listeners in the US, I will be at boot camp in Cincinnati with Jeff Metzger and his team the week after IACDP. It's a busy summer. There's a lot going on, and we're going to keep everybody in the loop. Ross, you can help me. I would love to get more Australians on the podcast. So if you can recommend others that have meaningful messages like yourself, I would love to get them involved. And with that, I will say goodbye.
All right. G'day, mate.
Thanks for tuning in to Paradigm Playbook. Explore more at ParadigmPlaybook.com. Want to be a playmaker? Contact StephenJCook.com. Share this episode to spread the word about sports industry opportunities. See you next week.